Hey friends, Andy here from Raphah, and this is the third part of the series where I'm showing you how I make an ambient track. In the previous two sessions, we've laid down a pad and put down some chord ideas for some structure. And in this session, what I'm hoping to achieve is to put down some bass, and that shouldn't take too long. So also look at putting in some string layers as well. So let's dive straight into Logic. And this is what we were working on last time, just as a recap. So it fades in really nicely with this gentle pad. And then the piano kicks in with those nice lush felt chords. So that repeats through 3 times in this A section, and it starts with quite a minor melancholy feel. The middle section is a bit more uplifting, and then the final section is a similar chord progression but with more of a major feel, and that's the structure that we're working with. So what I'm going to do is add in some bass now, and to do that I'm going to use a patch from Omnisphere called Warm Simple Bass. I like this one because it's warm and it's simple and it's a bass. And it just sits really nicely underneath the mix. And what I'm also going to do is use what's on my desk here on top of my keyboard, which is a MIDI controller made by Ghost Note Audio. It's absolutely brilliant for taking control of your MIDI and adding expression and giving you some hands-on control as to how things are sounding. It's useful for this bass because I don't just want bass coming in full bore right from the start. I want to fade it in subtly. So the bass sound we've got is that, and what I'm going to do is fade it in with this fader here that I've assigned to the volume. So let's get going on this one. We've got an A minor, G and an F, and I'm probably going to stick to something fairly straightforward. I'm going to stop that there because what I actually want to do is cut out half of that bass. I don't actually want it coming in until halfway through here. Completely messed that up. Okay, so I want it coming in for the second time round. I think it just has more impact. So you've got those nice gentle chords, and then they're just reinforced and underlined in the second half by that bass line. Okay, good. Right, let's move on to the second part. And here we have a G, A minor, D minor, C progression. So let's get this down. And I think what I'm going to do here, rather than fade it in fully, is start with some volume so it catches some of that initial attack. and hopefully that will, again, just reinforce the playing of that chord. So let's go this. Let's try that again. Just got to get my fingers and thumbs working in the right way. Okay, let's move on to the second section here. And we've got a G, A minor, D minor, C progression. Okay, let's move on to the second section, and here we have G, A minor, D minor, C progression. Okay, so just to recap what I've done there, followed the chord progression in that second half, and then in this final section, if I just whiz along here to this final section, you'll see here faintly in blue, that's the MIDI controller there. I haven't faded it down up every single time to have a complete swell, and the reason being I wanted the bass note to reinforce the beginning of the chord, to give it a little bit more punch and impact. Not too much, so it's about halfway up the slider. I might have to go back and adjust the timings there, because as I mentioned, don't use a click for this one, so it's entirely by ear and slightly by sight and looking at the MIDI region. But I think that pretty much completes the bass. I'm not going to do too much more with that now, because I will leave it there and come back to that probably at the mixing phase, and I might adjust some of those lines, but I think it's about as close as I need to get it for now. Okay, let's move on and add in some strings. And I always like to add a string element to my music because I feel it brings a real warmth and humanity to the track, which is particularly important, I think, currently with so much AI music being pumped out and the need to, as an ambient artist, make something that connects with the listener, that has that human touch. And I think strings does that really nicely, particularly if you have a MIDI controller and can add in the expression to it. So for this one, I'm going to use Spitfire's Originals Intimate Strings and the Long Flotando patch. I think I said that correctly. And it sounds like this. But we can't leave it there, so I'm going to add in the RC20 Retro Color. But I'm going to remove the noise. Sometimes I do leave that in as a bit of extra texture, but I just want the wobble and the tape effect. Just to give a bit of movement and a bit of texture. And then obviously we need some reverb. So I'm going to use Eventide's Black Hole for this one, and a preset I created called Strings Reverb Raphah, which should do the trick nicely. So you can hear the reverb tail on that. Shut these down. And I think I'm going to bring this in with the bass. So let's get going. And I think I'll play, so we've got the A minor G F. I'm going to play the 1 and the 3 for the A, then the 1 and the 5 for the G, and then do like a 7 for the F. That should sound nice. Okay, so in the middle section there, I just held on the 1 and the 5 of the C and the octave, and then I went back to that chord progression. I was actually playing the A minor over the C there rather than playing the C, but I think it sounded okay, but I might play with that and actually change that so I don't lose that major feel. Let's move that down to the G. And same here. Just to see if we can retain more of that major feel for the ending section. Yeah, I think I prefer that, because that final section is supposed to be a bit more uplifting and a bit more hopeful, so I think that suits a bit better. Okay, so as I mentioned in the middle section, I was just holding that 1/5 an octave on the C chord, and I was just using the expression, come back to that so you can see me, see what I'm doing. This section here, I was just using the expression to add some movement, some interest, almost like a pad there, like a strings pad, rather than moving between the chords. But I'm quite pleased with how that's sounding now, and it's starting to come together and take shape. And there's more elements to do, there's more things to add, but those are kind of the foundational things now. We've got the pad, we've got the chord structure, a bit of melodic line in there as well. We've got the bass, and now we've got some strings to fill it out. So next time I think I'm going to start to really add in some extra textures, maybe some field recordings or some other layers, and I think it needs a bit of sparkle, so perhaps some more higher frequency things, and then maybe in a couple more pads just to really round it out and finish it off before we can get to the mixing phase. But again, thank you for joining me and for your time. I hope you've enjoyed that. It's been helpful and useful, and a good insight into how I make ambient music. So take care, and I'll see you next time.